Wow, look at the high school dropout coming in. Such a stupid face, I can feel it from here. And do dropouts have kids with stupid faces too? How annoying. My son Daniel and I were at a fancy steakhouse. Then, I ran into a beautiful old classmate, Lisa, a returnee from abroad, who always looked down on me since our school days. She was with her foreign boyfriend, chatting and laughing in French. From their demeanor, you could tell they were bad-mouthing us. Suddenly, my son Daniel stood up and said, "Miss, I understand everything you're saying." After interpreting everything, Lisa turned pale when she realized who we were. "Listen, from tomorrow, there won't be a place for you at the company," my son Daniel added. Yes, the identity of me and my son Daniel that shocked Lisa and her foreign boyfriend. My name is James. I was a quiet, reserved boy during my school years. I was so clumsy in sports that I was a drag on my class during sports events. That's why in PE classes, I was always the target of ridicule. But there was one thing I could immerse myself in. It is studying. I loved it because it didn't require physical skills, and I didn't have to interact much with others. So, I was always among the top in my class academically. But because of my timid nature, I was an easy target in elementary school. I was often teased and spoken ill of by my classmates. This harassment continued in middle school. Among them, Lisa, a returnee from Paris, was particularly relentless in her teasing. All because you're a little bit smarter, you're too arrogant, you're so introverted, it's creepy, switch seats with me, you belong in the cold seat by the window. After the seat changed during break time, Lisa came to my seat and demanded to switch seats. It seemed she was dissatisfied with her seat and targeted me, thinking I'd be the most likely to agree. I didn't mind sitting by the window or anywhere else, so I just switched as she asked. Lisa even seemed displeased with my compliant attitude, but she quickly left when called by a friend. Such a fuss over a simple seat change. Others, though not as bad as Lisa, also seemed to think they could get their way with me, making unreasonable demands. I was forced to swap cleaning duties, and they would make up silly songs about me. Especially after tests, when my name was posted among the top scorers, they made me feel particularly bad. Still, I never felt I could win an argument. So I just quietly endured through middle school. After graduating, I decided to keep my future plans secret from my classmates, saying I'll work after high school, and enrolled in a technical college in a distant town. If you want to go to a technical college, that's fine with us. We support you. I wanted to avoid further interactions with my middle school classmates and sought a deeper learning experience not available in regular high schools. My parents readily agreed. My mom would say, if you have something you want to do, do it. I'm really grateful to have parents who supported me like that. Going there, I realized how well the extensive and profound education at the technical college suited me, especially in programming. I even won an award in a programming competition. "James, you're amazing. I'm so surprised." The girl who approached me after I won the award was Emily. She was a very bright and cheerful girl in my class. She was popular in our class, good at studies, and we quickly became friends. You were bullied in middle school, James. You might be quiet, but you are smart, and I enjoy talking to you." Despite our opposite personalities, Emily saw my traits as part of my charm, and we soon became a couple. I was still not great at socializing, but Emily, with her bright, blooming smile, was someone I could open up to. We clicked well, both being academically smart, and she liked me for who I was. And I liked her too. I thoroughly enjoyed my high school life, both in studies and youthfulness. After graduating from technical college, I continued my relationship with Emily while working at an IT company, utilizing my programming skills. At this IT company, all internal communication was done through non-face-to-face tools like chat, which was a comfortable environment for someone like me who is not good at interacting with people. The work itself was busy but fulfilling. The years flew by since I started working. Thank you for always being with me, Emily. If you're okay with it, will you marry me? Yes, I'd love to. Thank you, James. When things settled down at work, I proposed to Emily, and she happily accepted. We got married. A few years after our marriage, we had a child, and at Emily's wish, we named him Daniel. Daniel loved drawing more than anything, more than singing or being held. Usually, Emily or I would prepare crayons and a notebook for him, but at some point, he learned to do it himself, even though he was still a toddler, and would start drawing. These delightful days of watching Daniel grow came to an abrupt end. A tragedy struck our family like no other. Emily, who went to work on her day off, was struck and killed by a falling steel plate from a construction site. Why? Why did it have to be Emily? Dad, where did Mom go? She didn't leave us to go to heaven, did she? Daniel, realizing his mother, Emily, was gone, Daniel's disbelief was palpable, and I held him tightly in my arms. Working on your day off? Yes, they asked me to come in on Sunday because they were short-staffed. James, if you're okay, could you take care of Daniel? Emily had asked me about working on her day off a few days before. I didn't have work that day, so I agreed. I never imagined something like this would happen. If only I had stopped Emily for any reason. If only I had driven her to work, this might not have happened. I was filled with regret. And now, because I couldn't protect Emily, I had caused Daniel to suffer too. Daniel and I were engulfed in grief. But I couldn't stay away from work forever. I also started doing the unfamiliar household chores and parenting as a single parent. I've made dinner, so eat with Daniel. Mom, thank you so much. It's nothing. I know it's tough, but you need to hang in there with Daniel. Now, I have to go to work too. Though my parents helped occasionally with housework and childcare, doing it alone was a Herculean task. I tried to finish chores when Daniel was engrossed in drawing or asleep. After putting my beloved son to bed, I often lay exhausted on the floor, sprawled out, staring at the ceiling. In those moments, I'd find myself lost in thought, reminiscing about Emily. I realized how much I had taken Emily's kindness for granted, as she had always taken the lead in household and child care duties. Dad, we'll be late for daycare. Hurry up. Daniel, like Emily, was responsible, and he'd prompt me as I rushed in the mornings. After Emily's death, Daniel initially cried a lot, but gradually, he accepted reality, became stronger, and tried his best every day. I knew he must be missing his mother, Emily. Without ever complaining, he was always there for me, an incredibly good kid. For Daniel, and for Emily in heaven, I resolved to stay strong. And so, I balanced work, housework, and parenting. Every day was a whirlwind. I would often be the last parent to pick my son up from daycare. When I picked up Daniel from daycare, he was always drawing until the very last minute. Mr. Thompson, is Daniel always drawing like that? I asked Mr. Thompson, and he told me Daniel was so absorbed in drawing that he preferred it over playing with friends. It reminded me of my own student days. I reminisce about the times when I was studious and loved studying. Your son's drawings are all wonderful. If you and Daniel are okay with it, how about we submit his drawings to a contest? One day, Mr. Thompson from the daycare suggested entering Daniel's drawings in a competition. Hey, Daniel, how about we enter your drawings into a contest? What's a drawing contest? Well, it's a place where people who can draw as well as you get to show their work to experts who know all about article. On the way home, I discussed this with Daniel. His eyes lit up with excitement, and he immediately wanted to participate. So the next day, I told Mr. Thompson we would submit Daniel's drawings. Later, Daniel's drawing won the top prize. Knowing his talent, Daniel and I were overjoyed. Daniel, you're amazing. Who knew you had such talent? Great job." Daniel looked at me, beaming with joy, as if he was celebrating his own achievement. I patted his head with all my love. "Today, we'll treat ourselves to a nice meal." We started going out for meals whenever there was something to celebrate, just like that. As if to fill the void left by Emily's absence. We continued to live our days positively. A few years later, Daniel turned 9. Daniel and I went to a fancy steakhouse to celebrate this special occasion. Then, to our surprise, seated behind us was Lisa, my former middle school classmate. She was with someone who seemed to be her foreign boyfriend, and after a while, Lisa noticed me and started a conversation. "James, is that your kid? You always had a gloomy aura. I recognized you right away, and you were a high school dropout, right? How can you walk around your hometown without feeling ashamed? Just like in our student days." She looked down on me, still believing I was a dropout, laughing mawkishly. Then, Lisa and her boyfriend sat down at their table. But strangely, they started speaking in French, glancing over at us, seemingly talking about us. It brought back memories of middle school. The atmosphere alone made it clear they were bad-mouthing us. I had only one concern. Daniel, in fact, understood French perfectly. Suddenly, Daniel stood up and approached Lisa and her boyfriend. "Miss, I understand everything you're saying." "Oh, what's this kid talking about? There's no way a child can understand French." "No, you just said my dad was creepy in French, didn't you?" Hearing Lisa say such things again, I was appalled at how little she changed since middle school. But she and her boyfriend became furious with Daniel, accusing him of making things up. Daniel then began to recount everything they had said. He mentioned how I was plain and lonely in middle school, had no friends and a burden to the class due to my lack of athletic skills. And how even now, I haven't changed a bit, still plain, and even my kid looks plain and stupid, saying my stupidity affected my son. While I was left holding my head in dismay, Lisa and her boyfriend were still arguing with Daniel, denying everything and calling it nonsense. Daniel was known for being brilliant and talented, especially since he immersed himself in drawing as if to fill the void left by his mother's absence. His artistic skills had improved dramatically. He'd been delivering artwork to a French art dealers in elementary school thanks to his talent in drawing. And in the process of dealing with this art dealer, he had also mastered French. On my side, skilled in aita, I thought about leveling up my skills to enhance my son's language abilities. I left my job at the IT company and started an online language school with Daniel. Daniel mainly taught French to children who wanted to learn. For student sessions with kids, we involved Mr. Thompson, as he got along better with them. For languages other than French, we hired other teachers. I was in charge of the core systems of the company, like the teacher-student matching system and schedule management. Seeing Lisa and her boyfriend, I suddenly remembered something. They were recently hired as employees at our language school. I was at an event at Daniel's school the day of the interview and left the interview process to other staff, so I only received their resumes. I hoped they had changed over the years, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Remember, from tomorrow, there won't be a place for you two at the company. Lisa and her boyfriend turned pale, even forgetting the steak on the griddle was burning. It was their own doing. According to Daniel, Lisa and her boyfriend had also been speaking ill of students in French. It's outrageous to talk ill of students. As an executive, I had to address this issue. Such tasteless behavior. I hope you never show your faces to me and my father again. Daniel said firmly to Lisa and her boyfriend before returning to our table with a smile. "Come on, let's eat, Dad. We came here for this." His talent and even his smile seemed too radiant, making me wonder if he really was my son. He seemed too perfect, but watching him laugh innocently, I realized he still had the same carefree nature as any other child. And with that, Lisa and her boyfriend, unable to bear the shame, left the restaurant in a hurry, leaving their meal behind. I apologized to Daniel for the unpleasant experience. Daniel winked at me and told me not to worry about it. He's such a thoughtful kid. I often feel he's too good for someone like me. Hey, Mr. Anderson and Daniel. Then, we heard a voice calling us from the entrance of the restaurant. Turning around, it seemed that students from our language school had gathered. Mr. Anderson, you're here early. Have you started eating already? Wait, who's actually late here? I asked. Sorry, it was us. Indeed, this wasn't a class, so I had told them to come around lunchtime, but they were surprisingly casual about time. But are you sure it's okay for us to join for such an expensive meal? The students looked at me anxiously. I had decided to treat the students as a thank you for their help, like referring other students to our language school. Hearing this, the students were delighted. Soon, all the students gathered, and we celebrated the 3rd anniversary of our language school. Later, Lisa and her boyfriend were fired from the language school. Their mockery of us was problematic, but the direct cause of their dismissal was talking about customers outside the company. Apparently, Lisa had spoken about customers out of spite towards us, hoping to make it look like we were the ones who said it, but there were witnesses, and her plan failed. It was just retribution coming back to her. Lisa always struggled with studying and wasn't good at being persistent, had no talent other than French. With her personality, I heard she was having trouble finding another job, but I decided to leave her to her own devices. Her boyfriend, who was fired at the same time, influenced their situation, and soon they were drowning in debt. Then, her boyfriend lashed out at her, blaming her for their predicament. Why did you start ridiculing James so much back then? James was always good at studies and at the top of his class in middle school. I had good grades in France, but when I returned to America for middle school, the difference in the education system made it hard for me to keep up. Trying to justify herself to her angry boyfriend, Lisa continued, crying and speaking angrily. I was always near the bottom in tests. I thought I was capable, and that was frustrating. I hated him because he was good at studies. Because of her pride, she never talked about these feelings before, and Lisa ended up crying. Leaving the crying Lisa behind, her boyfriend, holding his head in his hands, apparently said, all this over that, and eventually left the house they were living in together. Now jobless and alone, Lisa was left to lead a lonely life. And then, a few days later, an unexpected incident occurred. Mr. Anderson, please come here. A panicked student led me to the entrance of the language school, where Lisa was causing a commotion with other students. What on earth is going on? James, it's all your fault. Lisa, having noticed me, rushed towards me. Clearly, her target was me. Seeing Lisa barge into our school without permission, not being a student or teacher, I glared at her with sharp eyes, feeling anger. It's all your fault. My life is a mess. Just because you could study a bit, getting all high and mighty, I'll sue you for firing me unjustly. After all this time, you haven't changed at all, Lisa. Why did you have to hate me just because I had good grades? There are plenty of people smarter than me. If it's about being top, you'd have to hate them too. What do you know about me? You know nothing. You have no idea how much I've suffered. I don't know because you never once tried to bridge the gap between us, Lisa. Hearing that, Lisa seemed taken aback. She had always showered me with unpleasant words whenever she saw me, so it must have hit close to home. After all, that was the root cause. Why did you have to hate me like that? I would have preferred you to say you were struggling and ask for help with your studies. If taking the upper hand over people is your life, you'll always be bound by your own pride. If you really want to be bound, be my guest. I've already called the police for trespassing. What? Police? Don't move. Then, as if on cue, police officers, apparently called by Daniel, stormed into the building and quickly apprehended Lisa. Shocked by the turn of events, I looked at Daniel, who gave me a peace sign. Such a fearsome child. Let go of me. I have business with this man. Even with the police there, Lisa, consumed by hatred, continued to struggle and was eventually escorted into a police car and taken away. That was scary. Glad she didn't have any dangerous stuff on her. She reminds me of that teacher, Mr. Smith, who was fired the other day. Maybe she's holding a grudge against Mr. Anderson. Well, she was leaking information, so it's only natural she was fired. Some students felt relieved and greatly relieved to be freed from their fear. Thanks to Daniel calling the police while I was talking to Lisa, thankfully, no harm came to the students or Daniel. The thought of what could have happened if they had been injured sent shivers down my spine. "Are you okay, Dad? You look pale." Concerned, Daniel looked closely at my face. I quickly assured him I was fine and forced a smile. Between the incident at the steakhouse and now this, I owe a lot to Daniel. As a father, I need to be more responsible. I put my hand on Daniel's head and gently stroked it to reassure him. "I'm okay. Thank you, Daniel. You really helped me out. Let's cancel the classes for today. Can you help me spread the word to everyone?" Of course. Inspired by Daniel's bravery, together we informed the students about the cancellation of the day's classes. Years later, the company Daniel and I built continued to grow steadily. I further enhanced our internal systems, automating most of the accounting to increase efficiency. This allowed us to raise the teachers' salaries and attract higher quality instructors. Daniel continued to draw, becoming so renowned that he won awards in major competitions open to adults. "Mr. Anderson, I'm a huge fan. Could I please have your autograph?" As he became famous, the number of enthusiastic fans increased, and Daniel was quickly surrounded by them. Overwhelmed by this, I noticed a few fans glancing at me. "Is that plain-looking guy a staff member? He's too plain. Totally out of place here and next to Mr. Anderson." I was wearing a suit, trying to look presentable, but overhearing the whispers of Daniel's fans, I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. I wondered what about me was giving off such a plain vibe. Maybe it's just because I'm an unremarkable man. Then, I remembered being targeted by Lisa in the past, proving it wasn't just a coincidence. Indeed, compared to Daniel, who sparkles like an idol, I, with my unfashionable black-rimmed glasses, lacked any aura and was worlds apart from him. Or maybe, it's just my face. As I stood there, shocked, Daniel, who had overheard the comments, came over to me with a smile that seemed to have sound effects and addressed his fans. "This man here is my father. He's the reason my artistic talent shines. So, if you're a fan of mine, I'd appreciate it if you refrain from making such comments." With Daniel's smile and statement, the fans' faces turned pale, and fearing the displeasure of the other fans, they quickly left the scene. Angering Daniel's fans can be really scary. Well, those kids probably wouldn't have said that if they knew I was your father. "Dad, you're too kind." Fans who behave like that at the scene are questionable. I was left speechless by Daniel's firm opinion, marveling at his excellence. It seems today's kids are not only talented but also compassionate. He really does take after his mother, Emily. Reminiscing about Emily, I watched Daniel being applauded by his fans with a fond smile. A few days later, on a tranquil spring day, Daniel and I chose to visit Emily's grave together. While sharing recent achievements, we talked about how studying really makes a person bloom, and effort never betrays you. I remembered Emily was also very studious, and that's what drew us together. Without Emily, Daniel wouldn't have been born. We all love studying in our family, don't we? It's moving to think that Mom and Dad's passion for learning brought me into this world. "Weren't you ever lonely without Mom, Daniel?" I asked him, looking concerned. Daniel had always been with me without any complaints, but he must have felt the absence of his mother. However, Daniel shook his head with a smile. "No, because Dad was always there with me." His smile and words almost brought tears to my eyes. Getting older makes one more prone to tears, it seems. You should be proud of yourself, Dad. I owe my success to you." I was so grateful to see how well Daniel had grown up. It was all thanks to Emily watching over us from above. In front of Emily's grave, Daniel and I joined hands, and I reported our lives to her. Then, as if Emily were responding, a gentle breeze blew between us. Cherry blossom petals, seemingly carried by the wind, appeared out of nowhere, fluttering in the air. One landed in the palm of my hand. It felt like a part of Emily's floral-like smile, so I gently stored the petal in my pocket. The presence of family seemed to have blossomed even a reserved person like me. It was then that I realized how much one's life can change through encounters with others. Following the example set by Daniel and Emily, I learned to smile more. As I became more open, naturally, people started to gather around me, and I began to slowly bridge the gap with those I had previously found difficult. Though I had kept them at a distance because of my discomfort, I started to realize that talking with many people wasn't so bad after all. Seeing me become more cheerful, Daniel seemed happy too, which made me feel joyful. I took out the cherry blossom petal I picked up during our visit to Emily's grave. I treasured it like a bookmark used in a book, carrying it with me as a charm, as if it were Emily herself. Ever since I found it, I felt as if it had been giving me courage. "Could it be, Emily? Is this you?" Feeling somehow as if Emily's spirit was residing in it, and finding myself alone, I spoke aloud without thinking. Even though I knew such a thing couldn't possibly be true. But I wished it were so. "Keep watching over Daniel and me, Emily." With a soft smile, I said this and then carefully placed the petal back into my pocket.